afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you're joining from, so let me first of all greet you from all the way possible. And welcome again to our session, right? Welcome again to our platform. Everyone tuning today, we're happy to have you. So, we're actually standing at the cusp of a revolution, not just a technological revolution, but also a revolution that has the power to reshape our cities, our economies, our environment, and us, the world, actually taking bold steps towards embracing electric vehicles. We are here to discuss a pivotal element that powered the shift is the EV charging infrastructure. Today, so we are incredibly fortunate, yeah, and because we have with us, somebody that really understands all of it. So it's William Pui Martinez. Is a name synonymous of expertise, foresight in the realm of electric mobility. So, with a global shift towards clean energy, we know the deployment of EV charging infrastructure. It is much more than a convenience. It is not. It has become a necessity. And as we are seeking to weave into this new tapestry of sustainable transportation, people like William, they are at the loom, they're threading innovation, policy, and progress. So we embark today on the discussion on an electrifying journey, yeah, of deploying EV charging network across the globe. And we're inviting you to stay put. We're going to be exploring the pathway that lies ahead. So let's ignite the conversation and spark a dialogue on how we can accelerate the future towards a charge EV with potential. So let me just bring William, which is on the backstage. Hey, William, how are you? Can you hear me?
Great. How you doing, Tony? Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you and everybody that will hopefully join the podcast. Thank you so much for having me, Tony.
Excellent, excellent. Let me just stop the music here, yeah, because I think I wanted to make sure that we in the groove, right? Because I know we're talking to expert like yourself. It's a delightful pleasure to have you here. So, William, first of all, I just wanted to start by introducing yourself. So, if you can just say to people who you are and then who you work for, so that they understand who we're talking about here.
For sure. So everybody knows my name is William Pui Martinez, as you mentioned. I'm originally born and raised in Panama City in the Caribbean, tiny country in the middle of Central America. I lived there until I was about 18 years old, and ever since, for the following about 19 years, I've been living in different parts of the world, basically enabling electric mobility to be deployed all over the world and working on some of the world's most innovative projects, both coming from oil and gas, believe it or not, making a switch because at some point I understood that we had to focus on the renewable side and the green side of the business, which is where the electric mobility and charging infrastructure comes into play. So, yeah, I'm originally from Panama, with studies in the United States, and my professional career starting in Norway,
Hmm.
where I was part of what was called at the time in 2010 was called the world's most innovative project, where you can think of it as a subsea compression system in the North Sea to extract oil and gas, making it more efficient. Put it this way. But even back then, 2010 to 2016, I already noticed a shift in the focus, a shift in the mindset of one of the leading oil and gas producing countries in the world.
Hmm.
I noticed pretty much everywhere a continuous increase of electric vehicles, brands like Tesla, all these brands pushing electric vehicles, and naturally with the right incentive from the government, people making the switch, and that obviously sparked my curiosity. So I was lucky at the time to actually met the team from Tesla, who at the moment were starting to think to come into Europe and say, you know what, this will be our future looking market that we need to electrify with clean mobility that will enable you to move all around Europe without the risk or the thinking that you were going to run out of charge. So basically, with a small team handpicked by Elon Musk and some of the Tesla management,
Mm.
we managed to connect from Portugal all the way to the south of Italy and a bit of the Balkan region with electric charging infrastructure. What I mean by electric charging infrastructure, I mean fast chargers, DC fast chargers, where you can compare them to a gas station nowadays, where you traveling between cities, you stop between 15 to 30 minutes, depend on the amount of charging you have in your vehicle, and you continue your journey. But also, when you reach your destination, being a hotel, a restaurant, a shopping center, you also have places to charge. So what this means that basically already in 2019 in the south of Europe, we already enabled that if you have an EV, you
Hmm.
will travel pretty much in any direction without the fear of having to run out of charge. And once you connect the south of Europe, you basically connect into the north of Europe that was already almost developed, and you can basically travel back then throughout Europe, and you will not run out of charge. So that's how the journey in mobility started, with basically what at the time and still could be one of the most innovative companies in the field. And then obviously, wanting to get more into the technology of things, how things works, I moved to ABB, where it's one of the one of the largest electric companies that produce electric components in the world. I was lucky enough to get a position as a global product manager, where we actually developed a DC wall box. Is a unidirectional charger, meaning a charger that only charges the vehicle at 24 kilowatts. We can go more into details later, right?
Okay.
and, and in parallel, developed something called is the vehicle to grid technology that we can also dig more into details. But basically, what this enables is that your vehicle is no longer something that moves from point A, that moves you from point A to point B, but your vehicle becomes an asset, becomes a battery that when you're not using it, you can monetize it. And have in mind that 80% of the time your vehicle is parked anyways. Therefore, you can actually make money out of your vehicle with what is called the V2X, or vehicle to grid technology. Yeah, so the journey goes from there, moving into more into the focus on how to use the battery more efficiently, and then into the core of what we're building now, as call it as green space mobility in a sense, is transforming emerging markets, putting all the learnings that we have put throughout the years since 2016, approximately, working these type of projects to push market, enable markets. Right now, we have built a team in Central America, for example, that is with the mission to accelerate the transition towards electric mobility, connecting from Panama to Mexico. The interesting thing about this is that when you tackle and you get into a new market that people might not believe in mobility, might have never heard of it, or is very skeptical, the switch is very quickly. Just to tell you that in only 2 years, in a small country like Panama, a company like Green Space Mobility is already the second largest company with the most influence in educating, call it installers, so we can deploy networks thoroughly, working with large companies like DHL so that they can electrify their fleet. And when you look deep into what is the core, what are some of the core environmental issues, I use again Panama as an example, is the pollution from vehicles. Therefore, we also tackle fundamental issues like people's health, and also making a switch toward more renewable energy and transportation, which is a bit of the core of we want to focus on.
Yeah. And why would you, well, how would you explain that people, as you said, they come across something that is new, but they adopt it very quickly? That according to what you just telling me there, it is a matter of just 2 years. Looks like the company is growing significantly in Panama. So what is actually explaining that? Would you say?
Yeah, so like I said, so people are, most people now, it's about education, right? I think people don't understand how efficient an electric vehicle is. What I mean by efficiency, let's start by the basics, right? So in order for an electrical vehicle to move, if we were to compare, for example, the engines, the engines of the motors, an electrical vehicle engine, you can probably carry it with your hands if you can handle the weight. It's a fairly small system with very few components. Think of, in approximate, right? Let's say 17 to 30 components that actually have to move and create a movement in order to propulse the vehicle. If you compare that to an internal combustion engine, we're talking over 2,000, 3,000 components that need to move up and down, make a combustion, and this just translated into losses. Therefore, you can think of an electric vehicle engine as being something very efficient. We're talking about, let's say, over 90% efficiency in what you actually use from what is produced, versus internal combustion engine that could be somewhere in the 30 to 40%. Already there, the electric engine is ahead. And also, when you think of what I just mentioned, this tiny comparison of, let's say, on the manufacturing side, it is a lot easier, simpler to manufacture an electric engine versus an internal combustion engine. And that also translates into another part, which is the maintenance and the support. It's a lot simpler, a lot, yes, basically a lot simpler to manage. There's almost no maintenance. And
Hmm.
the thing is that once people start realizing some of the benefits of going into electric, like I can leave my house every day with, let's say, on average 4 to 500 kilometer range on my vehicle. That means that any trip I do during the day or most of the week, I will only need one charge. And then
Mm.
when do I charge? I charge when I'm not using my vehicle, and that is anyways 80% of the time that I don't use my vehicle. And so that's what we try to do, right? To educate the people that the transition to electric mobility is actually easier than you think. You no longer have to think, and this is one of the most interesting part, right? I no longer have to think, where do I go and charge? But I just think, you know what? I'm gonna go have dinner at that restaurant, and it happens to be that while I'm having dinner, enjoying my
You
services
can
at the
charge.
my vehicle is charging. And if
Right.
it's during the day and you're lucky to have either, it could be from 100% solar energy. So there's so many benefits to the switch. And like I mentioned, it's a matter of educating and then you go to the more, I guess, subtle part. Like people like, I miss the rumble, I miss the sound. Most people don't understand that electric vehicles, most of them are quicker. There's an insane amount of torque, there's an insane amount of emotion and technology in the vehicle. Yes, if you want to have a loud vehicle, I enjoy motorcycles, that's great. That's something for the weekends. But once you make the swap towards electric vehicle, you start understanding that even the sound pollution becomes something that you don't want to be a part of. So it's a matter of
Yeah,
testing, trying, and getting on a wave that at this point, most people will realize that it's almost unstoppable.
yeah. So I must conclude that you must be driving an EV, right?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. I've been driving an EV now for some time, and the funny thing is that when you go back to driving a non-EV, it feels archaic. It does. It's from the lagging of the acceleration to the vibration to it's different.
It's like you back into another world. No, that's fine. So, William, I think what you said is just beautiful for me. And I know, by the way, so for people watching also, if you have any question for William, to drop it in the comment, please. And I think we would love to do it because that's the whole point. The whole point, William said, he's here to educate all of us, including me, about what it is to drive a vehicle. So how can we put together the EV infrastructure? Because that's actually the big question. People always asking, okay, if we're going to be driving EVs, if I want to go, for example, I don't know, do like a 300-mile journey. So, am I going to be safe to do it? I've heard from you saying that you've designed an infrastructure, from Portugal all the way to Italy. That's brilliant. So, basically, it's coming. But I know you have a presentation for us, guys. So, drop question if you have it. But if you want to take us a couple of projects that you've seen, there's some beautiful pictures that you showed
Mhm.
me before we went on live. So, if you can just share that, let me
For
just
sure.
bring that here, and I'm
Yeah,
just going to be on backstage, and then I'll let you go through them.
yeah. This will be just very basic examples of the thing we do, and this is just a quick picture of some of the management team in for example, in Greece Basic Mobility and how we're spread all over the world. But some of the reference project, and I want to call it like this because this is projects that, one, we have either participated on, or this is also projects that I've recognized globally, that for people in this podcast or stream to see what's happening on the slightly more developed countries. Example number one I want to show is, this is a site that I stumbled upon when traveling in Scandinavia, Norway. This used to be a gas station, but nowadays in Nordic Scandinavian countries like Norway, already last year, about 80% of every vehicle sold is already electric. From 2024 moving onwards, most of the car manufacturers are not even importing uh, internal combustion engine cars. So this should already give you an idea that in countries like Norway, where you actually produce oil, gas, the focus is it's not on that side. The focus is on you electrify and clean the environment. And this is a great example. This is a gas station from Circle K, where you see that there are no longer charging posts for combustion vehicles, but only electric vehicles. And here, for example, a vehicle will park, and in about 10 to 15 minutes, you can have 400 kilometer range, which will be more than enough to either get to the next charging destination where you stop 10 to 15 kilometers, sorry, 10 to 15 minutes for a bathroom break, and you have enough charge to get to your destination or to the next charging post. A nice one, other interesting thing that, and this is more into what as a company we're doing. For example, we joined forces in Panama, for example, with Mercedes, where every customer from Mercedes that buys an electric vehicle, they will have already designated spots in specific places, let's say in their favorite restaurants, in their favorite hotels, in their office, I mean, any destination. And what this means, it means that if I have an electric vehicle, I have a saying. I will call the team and I will say, hey, you know what? This is my favorite restaurant. I would like to work with the owner so we can push out and the installation of an electric vehicle. And this is how electric mobility works. In emerging markets, we start to create a community, and together, we start influencing the culture and mostly giving them visibility of how easy it is to move. And in most places, we will have exclusive charging locations for people with electric vehicles. So they will go there and they will be able to charge, like I mentioned, and use some of their services. And this is always great to show. I mean, DHL being one of the most internationally known and established companies, I think it might be actually in the world, has chosen to work, for example, with a team of Green Space Mobility in Central America to transition their about up to 80% of their fleet by 2025. What this means? It means that one, they will deliver all of the packages of people around Panama, mostly charged with solar energy during the day or when not used. And and the impact here is great because you're reducing emissions, which is the most polluting factor, like I mentioned earlier. You're moving with these vans might have 300 to 400 kilometer range, which is maybe 3 times more than what they need on a daily basis to complete the routes, and they do it in a clean way. So the way it works is overnight you charge your vehicle, every morning you leave with your fleet, let's say in this range 300 to 400 kilometers, and the process just goes. So this is a lot simpler than actually having to refuel your vehicles. They're saving a lot of CO2 from the environment, and obviously the cool thing is that you can monitor anything that happens via apps. You know how much they're charging, what is the usage, and it's a lot. You can create a lot more data to understand the patterns of the drivers. And this is just another example of, for example, this in particular is on a convention center. Moving forward, any destination like we mentioned, everybody that goes here for conference, for events, for expos, they have the opportunity to park their vehicles, and by the time they are leaving, their vehicles are 100%. Therefore, you never have to stop for charging, but charging is there wherever you basically park your vehicle. And that's one of the focuses of the team. So, I mean, this is very briefly some of the examples we have and how installations are done. In charging in general, you typically want to charge at home or office. I mean, meaning you want to wake up every morning with up to 80% to 100%, depending on the day of mobility, and then you don't have to stop for charging ever, depending on the size of the country, obviously. But yeah, like Tony mentioned, I mean, if there's any questions, anything you're curious about, any challenges you see in your market, I mean, we can always discuss to see what could it be. One of the main focuses on things we like to do and focus is how do we use renewable energy to power mobility. And in all of our projects, that's the focus, using solar energy storage, so that energy is transferred into the vehicles and then used for mobility, reducing obviously emissions.
Excellent. I think that's brilliant. So, just quick question for you. That when I have why we have this picture, Green Space Mobility, obviously that's your company. So is it that you guys deliver the actual infrastructure? So what is that you guys really deliver? So that is also very clear for people here to
Yeah.
understand.
So what Green Space Mobility does is we work. Our mission is to open a country almost every year. So we go to a country and we say, electric mobility is going to happen here, yes or yes. So we start by evaluating what is the country's regulatory framework in order for that to be pushed. If in that case we can always participate and share some of the knowledge we have seen globally in order to help on that transition. Second, we provide a guidance on what technology to use. By
Mm.
technology, I mean what chargers to use, how to connect it to the right software, and most specifically, we train local teams so that they can work on the installation of systems. And that's what we do basically. All this experience we learn globally, we come to emerging markets with the latest and greatest technology, software that we know is gonna work on the system. By work, I mean you will be able to monitor your charger 100% of the time. You're gonna be certain that whenever a customer wants to charge, the charger is available. Just like the customer is gonna be able to see it, and that enables the right servicing and always making that the right transition. And I say this because um, in many countries what we see is that people think that electric mobility is the installation of this charger and this is over. No, electric mobility is very is constantly changing. An electric charger, like an EV, like your phone, continuously get updates because standards change, there's improvements, there's new safety measures, and that is what we bring to the table, that knowledge. And we obviously transfer to the local teams, partner up with emerging strong players, and that's what we try to enable, making it as simple as possible, the transition with the right products, right software, and right teams locally, so that this can happen because it
Okay.
will happen.
Okay, that's great. So that means, if I understand you, so basically, when you come in, so you come into a virgin territory. So obviously, you know that e-mobility is going to get there at some point in time. So you walk the journey with them first for educating them as to what exactly the industry is all about, what infrastructure needs to be in place, who they need to deal with. You bring those guys on board because you already have the information, and then you sort of supervise that journey all the way, and obviously make sure that once you leave, the knowledge has been transferred to the local team to carry things forward. Yeah, so that's what I understood. Yeah, so
Correct.
that's brilliant. And you say something that's very interesting here. Two things. Yeah, one, you mentioned that in I think it's Norway, 80% of the cars are electric vehicles. That's fantastic, phenomenal. Whoa, this guy always far ahead. I think anyway, you're in the right country there. The second thing that you also mentioned, which obviously was interesting for me, was that you said that your ambition, and which is an ambitious goal, so you're going to be traveling quite a lot, is to open the country, one country every year, which is very, very impressive, and I love it. So let me ask you a question then. So, what kind of strategies? Sorry, how do strategies, to deploy EV infrastructure varies across different countries? Because some nations are more advanced than others. So how does it change, from your perspective?
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many factors that influence this, right? So amongst them, starts with the size of the country. The smaller the country is, the easier it is to build a charging infrastructure and connect the dots. The larger the country is, the more players that are involved, and then the more either you can find more resistance, and you can find um, yeah, you maybe can find more resistance because there's just more challenges to it. So I mean, whenever we go to a country, we start to understand. For example, we start with the main cities, typically where there's the most movements, and when you identify between what cities is the most movement. Maybe this is the corridor we need to look into. Or maybe we say vehicles are only sold within this main city. How do we enable that those that are buying the vehicles in this city feel comfortable? So yeah, it's a matter of studying what each country is doing, what are the challenges per country, and adapting to it. There is in e-mobility, there's not a one solution fits all. It's more like how do we identify what are the top three challenges, and how do we start tackling it in order to create that snowball effect? Because everywhere we have been, there's resistance. But everywhere we've been, I also found that those that give me the most resistance typically end up being the most that are the most advocate for what we do. I've seen
Yeah.
it almost every time, to be honest,
Mm.
because it's a matter of of getting to know it. I mean, ultimately, what we want to achieve here by implementing e-mobility, rolling out infrastructure is that you can move clean. So yes, I mean that's a start. I
It's,
mean, I know it's a very generic answer, but it
no, it's a
really
great start. It's a good start. A good start. And so, what do you see at the moment being the biggest obstacle to the widespread deployment of EV charging station, and how can industry stakeholders overcome them?
yeah. It's a bit of like what I call the chicken and the egg, right? So if people don't see charge EV charging infrastructure, they feel hesitant to buy an EV. So if people buy an EV, then they feel fear of this range anxiety if I can actually move. So I think the thing here is one overall in the markets, mostly in emerging markets, the amount of electric vehicles one can purchase have two downfalls. One is typically the prices are, if not, they're typically at above the regular price for a vehicle. Meaning they're slightly more expensive. And two, also the amount of, call it, the variety of vehicles you can choose from is still limited. And why is this happening, right? It is happening because the demand of electric vehicles in large market is so high that I believe that those making the vehicles don't have enough bandwidth to distribute, I will say, all the vehicles that you might want in emerging markets. And this is changing over time. And just so you have an idea, right, when it comes to the pricing, if you look at what Tesla has been doing up to this point, the prices of the vehicles, particularly this year for a Tesla, is already in the United States, given the incentives, for example, is already in par with average car that most people would buy. Let's say
Hmm.
a Toyota Corolla, is already in par with a car that most people buy anyway. So there you see a disruption happening very quickly. And what we see is that once this type of vehicles are available in other markets, others follow through. Um, so yeah, I mean, those are the two basic challenges, right? So vehicle availability per country, costs, and then how do we tackle the investment towards, are we going to build charging infrastructure here, take a gamble if there are no EVs, you know
Yeah. Quick question for you here. So, by the way, so I think I'm just loving what you said there. So I can see people are watching us, guys. So ask me questions. So ask questions. So William is here to respond, because I will talk to you about EVs. I can make few comments here and there. Yes, I have some knowledge, but in here we have an expert, somebody who's working that, somebody who worked with Tesla before, who worked with ABB, and is doing some tremendous work at the moment. It's happening in one country per year. So this is the right guy you want to be talking to. So please, so do me a favor, do ask a question, and that would be great. So let me just come back to you, so William. So what's how significant is the role of government policy in the expansion of EV infrastructure, and what kind of policies have you found the most effective in supporting this growth?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and to start answering is key, is essential. Why? Because if you see what the most dominant countries in e-mobility, the reason why they're so dominant starts with the policies. I use Norway as an example. In Norway, as an example, for example, the import of EVs is taxes is zero, versus the import of gas vehicles is, I believe, is like 100%. Therefore, it's almost a no-brainer already to purchase an EV. But then you go into the lesser incentive, which is you can drive in the bus lanes, you have priority parkings,
Mm.
and you can demand from your local municipality to install public chargers. I mean, you're backed up by your country, by your government saying move towards this transition, right? If you go towards Amsterdam, the Netherlands, for example, there is a great example too, because you have the highest uh, charging the highest number of chargers per
Per
capita, just
capita.
because. Yeah, because the government allows you the possibility to say, if in my neighborhood 4 people have chargers, you have the right. Sorry, so 4 people have an electric vehicle, you have the right to demand there's a public charger within my street. These type of incentives are measurable.
Okay.
And when I go, for example, to the emerging market, let's say let's say Panama. Panama, although the regulations are, I'll call them modest, is a good push. By modest, I mean if you buy an EV, the taxation is less than a regular car. That's already an incentive. You don't pay, for example, the registration of the license fee. It's not a huge amount, but that's already an incentive. Also, the driving, the parking, all the softer sides of the incentives. But what is key here is that the government also sets an example, meaning they need to have as mandates, typically like the public buses start to be electrified, the taxis and fleets get incentive for electrification, and also the government vehicles, because this also helps people build trust that these vehicles work. It is easy to move in these vehicles, and they see the leaders making the switch, and that also helps.
Yeah, actually, excellent. So, what kind of promising innovation in EV charging technology you believe will actually shape the electric transportation?
Yeah. And there's quite a few. I mean, so some of the projects I'm working now with Nube Holding Corp is what I call V2G. I believe that vehicle to grid will play a significant and very interesting role for people with electric vehicles. By V2G or V2X, what I mean is that, like I mentioned at the beginning, my vehicle is a moving battery. It means that I can go to work. Ideally, while I'm at my work, my vehicle is being able to be charged by solar energy, let's say. And this energy, when I come home in the evening, I discharge it when I turn on my air conditioner, when I turn on whatever you need to power your home. You can use part of the energy that you have collected during the day, and this has a tremendous effect because it reduces your energy bill. But also, you can sell this energy back to the grid because it's both ways. And your vehicle basically becomes a moving battery that makes money when you don't use it. I think this concept, this technology in general is brilliant. And there's a lot of challenges to it, of course, along the way. You have to think of, are the EVs are the EVs ready for this? Is the charging infrastructure ready? And the policies in each government allows you to do it. So it's still on the phases where many do, and many are following suit. Slowly but surely, we see good progress in North America. For example, a great example is the school buses for kids. The school buses for kids as a perfect is a perfect use case, because you use the vehicle from 7 in the morning to noon.
Hmm.
Then it's parked. I mean, you basically have a gigantic many battery store parked for hours that you can use this energy back to the grid. And then when you pick in the afternoon, then you repeat all over again. And this is one. I mean, you also have some innovative things like wireless charging. Wireless charging means basically your vehicle is just charging when you go over a system, like induction charging.
Hmm.
If you park, you don't have to plug anything. This is still being tested. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons. Um, and I would say services around it. I mean, one of the most interesting things I see now is super fast charging. Super fast charging. I mean, nowadays we have megawatt charging for trucks. I mean, I don't know if you've recently seen, but Tesla and Mercedes, they both have trucks that in one day, electric trucks that in one day, heavy duty trucks, they have been able to haul over 1,000 kilometers. And in order for you to do this, obviously, you need to have very fast and powerful charging infrastructure. And that in just a few minutes, you can continue your journey. And the same thing with vehicles. I mean, the topology of vehicles right now already enable you to charge, let's say, 10 minutes, and you
Hmm.
can have 400-500 kilometer range, which is more than enough that you need to make your next stop, to refuel, sorry, to recharge or to reach your destination. So,
Yeah.
I mean, from fast charging to V2G to innovative things like inductive charging, somewhere around here we see a lot of innovation.
Excellent. I have a couple of questions. I think that we need to start about wrapping up. I think that's such a fascinating conversation. But to be honest, we can spend days and days. I can already tell you, I definitely will be inviting you back because there's a lot that we need to explore that. So tell me, because obviously a lot of the EVs infrastructure as we see at the moment is happening in mature economies, and which is great. So for emerging markets, and again, even in emerging markets, you also have some that are much more emerging than others. Yeah, let's not get into that discussion. But what would you say? What would you advice you would give to those emerging markets, including some countries in Africa that say, "Hey, we've seen that that's beautiful. We want to get there." But obviously, we lagging behind at the moment. We're still sourcing for energy for us just to light up, our room. So, what kind of advice would you say for somebody like you who really know the technology? So,
Yeah,
how could it potentially happen? It's not so distant future for
yeah.
everybody.
It is not such a distant future. It might seem futuristic, it might seem out of your reach, but the reality is that the technology right now, I mean, anywhere in the world, we can enable the following. We can enable you to charge with 100% renewable energy and using electric vehicles regardless of where you are. This is possible now. And all we need really in order for this to happen is people that have the drive, the passion, and the desire to make changes. The reality is that you don't need for everybody to be on board. This will never be the case. Most of the time, people are hesitant. You only need one, two, three minds that get together and say, "Let's do a pilot." And once you get the people committed to do a pilot, committed to understand on what we need, then we go into the second phase. How are we going to do this pilot? And things will roll. So my recommendation would be always to reach out to companies like us, to experts, and say, this is my market, this is the opportunity I see, this is the challenge I have, and what can we do? And I guarantee you that there's a solution to it, regardless of what it is. So we have seen it many times in places, and if we go into very emerging markets, is there's actually an advantage because you can skip you can skip directly to the ultimate trend, and that is possible. So I mean, my recommendation is, if you really want to make a change and you believe there's a need for it, then most likely you can make it happen.
Excellent. That's beautiful to know. And obviously, I can say to people listening to us, by the way, guys, if you still want to ask questions, just drop it there. I think I've had some people sending me a private message just to ask the question. That's fine. You can also do it this way. So that's why I have been asking those questions. So, but you can feel free to reach out to William, on LinkedIn, and I'm sure that he will respond to you. Or reach out to us. We can connect you very, very quickly. So, my last question for you, William, before I leave the floor for you to also conclude your last message. But my last question first is, so can you elaborate a little bit more on the economic opportunities? Because that's very important. That the expansion of EV charging infrastructure present for local communities and businesses, because that is important. Is also giving better livelihood to people. So what kind of economic opportunities have you seen so far?
Yeah. In emerging markets, the opportunity is huge. This is like think about it this way. Think about when oil was first discovered. When oil was first discovered, you had to put the first gas station, you had to put the first pipelines in order for you to be able to travel. And nowadays, in emerging markets, is where you have the area where you can start thinking of where you want to put chargers in order for you to guide where electric vehicles would go. If I install a charger now in an area where there's no chargers, it means that any EV that comes to my region will have to stop in my shopping center, in my residence, because that's the only place. And you can monetize this. I mean, it's not in many cases it's not a very high investment. However, you're putting a system, you're securing a location, you're giving visibility to an area where you can say, you know what, you can charge your electric vehicle here. You can, in the meantime, those 20, 30 minutes, 1 hour that you stay here, I can offer you the services. And therefore, you're monetizing the charging, you're providing clean energy, and you're selling your services. So this will be a good time to start thinking of, how do I put charging points or charging infrastructure so that people with electrical vehicles can travel here, or we can start the process, and then you secure the sites, which is great. I mean, this will be there forever.
And I think I can't back you enough on that because in my personal case, because I usually like to go for a run, and I noticed there was obviously one small hotel. There's a bread and breakfast, yeah, bed and breakfast, yeah, B&B. And I noticed not long ago that they have a large banner where they actually saying EV chargers in here. And I promise you, it wasn't there before. And I stopped it. I was like, and I found it very, very interesting. That's exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. So
Mhm.
what it means then is anybody with EV vehicle in the area knows that I can go there to charge up my vehicle. And once I'm there, obviously I might as well just have a coffee, have a drink, have some food. So yeah, absolutely. So and that's actually how it brings new a new opportunity. No, that's brilliant. So that was a great illustration. So what? Listen, William. I think we coming toward the end of our call. So I just wanted to give you the floor, maybe for one final word that you want to share with people listening to you. And then yeah, so what is that you have to say? So let me just leave the floor to you, and yeah, off you go.
Yeah. I mean, and just to conclude, right? So here, for example, with the Green Space and Mobility team, we we are a group of young, passionate people with one clear mission. Our mission is to accelerate the transition towards electric and sustainable mobility, and we do it by understanding, so to say, what are what are some of the trends, right? And there is no doubt in my mind or our team's mind that this is the way to go. The technology is there, and more importantly, the passion to do it. So my only advice will be really for you to start. If this is something you're just curious about, always feel free to reach to myself or anybody in the team to get more questions about green space and mobility. Particularly follow the Instagram account. It's called Green Space Mobility, where the team constantly puts some of the updates of what they're doing all around the world, and we're always open to discussions. I mean, that's how we got into meeting Tony with with his very good invite for the renewables in Africa initiative, and that's what I'm saying. So always happy to support. I'm very happy to be here, Tony, and pleasure meeting everybody that's going to have the opportunity to listen to this. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So, William, and like I say, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you to you. So that was I was once I saw that you were doing, I thought I need to speak to you. I
Mhm.
need to come on this platform to share with people what is it all about building that infrastructure that we know we need. One thing that we've not mentioned, like I said, because it's such a big topic, we can talk about everything. In the continent of Africa, for example, one thing that is pushing ahead big time, ahead of that, the cars are actually e-bikes. E-bikes are becoming big,
Mhm.
and I get the feeling that in the continent, this is probably how this industry is going to take off, right? From the e-bike to the vehicle, but it's
For
still
sure,
e-mobility. So and
for
it
sure.
still needs obviously EV infrastructure. No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And then yeah, I'm sure we'll have you back at another time. Thank you, Williams.
Great. Thanks, Tony. Thanks everybody. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, that's what we had as a conversation today. So again, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thank you to William Pui Martinez. So for sharing his invaluable insights to all of you and to me, and we've learned a lot in this enlightening conversation. So we actually traversing in the landscape of EV charging infrastructure. From the challenges and the innovation to the policy and the future prospects. And it's clear that the road ahead it's both promising but also demanding. So let's be honest, right? So we need to be able to solve challenges because sometimes people think that when you're talking about this new clean energy world, people got the feeling we're all going to have only the benefit, not the drawbacks. Yeah, you got to go through some challenges before it gets better. So, and I want you to take with us to take with all of us the understanding of that deploying the EV infrastructure globally isn't just about setting up the technology, but it's also about crafting an ecosystem where you have sustainability, economy, society converging harmoniously. Yeah, and as we power down the discussion, so it's important to power up our commitment to make electromobility accessible and sustainable for everybody. Yeah. So let's keep an eye on the horizon. For every kilometers of charging cable laid, and every charger installed. So on this milestone of a journey to cleaner world, I'm sure there's many things that we could say. So until next time, so guys, let's keep the momentum. So charging forward, and remember that every great journey begins with a simple act of plugging in. Guys, thank you very much, and keep driving the positive change. And we're gonna bring you some more people. And as usual, if you have questions, leave it as a comment. I'm gonna respond. William gonna respond, and it's a pleasure to have you with us every day. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.